Welcome to On a Way with Beryl Bachman, in conversation with Dr Marlene Le Roux. Marlene is the CEO of Artscape that incorporates the Philharmonic Orchestra as well as the ballet and a music station, Fine Music Radio, just to mention a few. But today Marlene is here as my friend. Marlene, welcome.
I thank you, Beryl. It's actually a conversation long overdue. Just sharing our journey is just going to be, for me, it's like a healing process.
Yes, and I think for me it's always good to start at the beginning, how we started. We knew each other during the time of the struggle against apartheid when we were both activists in education, during the time of the United Democratic Front, and we used to see each other but we knew of each other, I think, but we didn't really know one another until we became colleagues in the Western Cape Education Department as education specialists. Now, that was a time of transition in our country, so there were many things that we had to grapple with, but I don't want to dwell on that. But do you have anything just shortly to say about that time?
I think for us, it was like a song and a dance and to get this apartheid over and done with. That is why it's like you see each other at marches, you see each other at rallies. And we always say now, when people say they've been part of that anti-apartheid struggle, but we've never seen them at the marches.
It was actually small enough
Yes.
and often enough. We were literally on the streets on a weekly basis for us to really know one another. You coming from the northern suburbs and the southern suburbs, but we're not going to talk about that northern suburbs, southern suburb vibe. What I do want us, I think, is apart from us being in tune and interested in the same kind of thing, we became our real and true soul sistership came with grief.
I want to say also, Beryl, is that our actual interconnectedness actually was also started with that walking with the transition in the WCED, the Western Cape Education Department, because that was also grief. Because when we entered that space where we could never enter, actually we had a sense that we could make change coming from our activist background. And when we actually entered this, the arena of this, we realized that we had the ideology, we had the activism, but we also had the education background. We were educated coming into that space, but the reality was something else. And we actually grieved also that loss in a way. So in that way, we were also very much connected because that was values that we shared. And also, in Afrikaans, it was onnuchter. Is that government is government, and we expected something else. And on that basis, actually, we walked actually a path of grieving something which we thought it will change. And when we actually started with our loss, which it was personal losses, I won't say it's easy, but we knew actually where we came from and our value system.
So we knew one another in that we had those occasions that we had those big meetings where everybody from the whole province would get together. And you would stand up, and I would stand up in those meetings. And but it, as you say, it was disillusioning, and both of us left the department in the 90s.
Yes, we left because we both.
In the early 2000s, I
Yes.
think. But I do also pay respect to those who stayed and made some differences in that, but the staying was not for the two of us.
And we respect our colleagues.
Yes.
But the grieving processes that we went through there was actually very painful. It was a painful process.
But then our personal journeys of grief happened to us. And I think the first was mine when Russell, my husband, died. And you went on a journey with me that I must be honest, I didn't expect from you. I expected it from somebody else. I maybe expected it from somebody that I thought was closer to me, but you drew me into your circle, and your circle was big. You didn't have to do that. And you drew not only me, but me and my daughters, Roxanne and I, as well, and to a lesser degree, Ilse, who lives outside of this province. And you invited us to your home. And when people invite me to their homes, it really means a lot to me. And so you carried me and you were kind to me. I met Adam. You invited us, both Roxanne and I, to Adam's birthday. And that for me are huge things. That, as I say, I expected from other people, but not from you. And that drew me so close to you that when it was your turn to grieve, I could step in a way that you have stepped in, but you have walked before me.
You know, Beryl, I can still remember the day when I got the phone call. I was in the hairdresser. I don't know how I got to your home. Russell was still in the house. And I made that day a commitment. I will stand by you. And it was the universe that actually came to a standstill on that day. It was the connectiveness that you had with Russell. Because I was also there when you walked that street, when he became the first person of color, the rector of Stellenbosch. It was history for our people. I was there as well. And it was not a duty, it was a love. And it was a love journey that we actually started. A journey of respect, but a journey of just being there. And loss comes in different ways. It's not just death. It was, I could see and I could feel. Because although Adam was still alive, Adam was actually also, in a way, starting preparing me that I need to start to prepare myself. I just didn't see the signs.
When Adam died, I stepped in. Adam was your son, and you can speak about Adam. He was a very special person who dwelled the earth with a presence that wasn't the conventional one who spoke or one who could live in a conventional way as we able-bodied are. But having you support me when my husband Russell died in such a soft and gentle way, it was automatic. I didn't have to think about that. I just have to step in during this time because now is the time for you to be carried. And I decided this time it was my commitment. Like you made a commitment when my husband passed. I made a commitment. Marlene, I will support you.
You know, Beryl, it is what you and Russell didn't realize how welcoming you were as a couple to me personally. You obviously, we were in the same circle sometimes, but the way the two of you have treated me was only love and kindness. And that is why when Russell passed on, it was just, as I said, not duty, it was a matter of giving back love. With Adam's passing, Russell also passed in his sleep. Adam also passed in his sleep. Although Adam, my son, Sunshine, was severely cerebral palsy, couldn't see, couldn't walk, couldn't do anything for himself, but he had a presence. We had a connection. It was that it was beyond, you can't explain this to anyone, only when you have experienced it. And you have experienced Adam in your grief. If Adam felt uncomfortable with somebody, he made it very clear. But when you stepped into our home, when you came to visit us during Russell's, in your deep, deep grief period, you experience Adam's light. And that light, I could see you came in troubled in the home. But then we would sit and we become calm. And for me, it was such a privilege that Adam and I, because in the first part of the grief, it was Adam and I that traveled with you. Because what people don't realize is that my life was Adam. It was work and Adam. They saw the person, me, in lights, but they don't know that I didn't have an in-between. It was Adam. And when we traveled this journey with you, because it was a journey and it was not a nice journey, and all that Adam and I could do, and that is what Adam taught me, sometimes words means absolutely nothing. It's the act. that you just need to sit with a person. And Adam taught me that. Not words, that that person can come and just be that person. And I'm very grateful that Adam could journey that experience with you. That actually helped me to accept actually that other people could journey with me. I didn't realize that time, Bill, that that life was actually preparing me also for a big loss. Because I'm a woman with a disability, I became very self-reliant from a very young age. How to navigate life, how to look at discrimination in your face and navigate it the other way and make light of it. When Adam was put on my lap, I needed to navigate life. And hardly really ask people to help me. I put systems in place to help me with Adam. But you that accepted to be also with us, that actually, I was also thinking about it when I came here, because it took me some time to ask myself, what was our deep journey? And our deep journey actually started how you prepared me to shed on myself in order to survive my big grief.
You know, when you spoke earlier about Russell and I as a couple and how our social engagements at events where most likely you would also be. And if we were at an occasion where there was dancing, I always insisted, I always insisted with Russell, dance with the single women.
Exactly.
And, and so Russell did that, and you
Yes.
were one of his dancing partners.
Exactly.
But you remember, I had to say, this is enough. I want my husband back because they didn't have limits.
Yes, because we used to Kabzela.
So in those light, I never thought of it like that, but I know that I make a point. I made a point of that because I knew before I was single for quite a long time before I married Russell, and I knew what it was like to be at a social gathering and be left sitting on the side idle,
Exactly.
and nobody's partners were interested or allowed to dance with him. And then there were the other partners that didn't ever dance. And I loved that about him. And he did it with flair and he loved it. And he loved this being the
Yes.
center of attraction. And so I like that you mentioned that about us as a couple.
And as a
So
couple, Beryl, it's like you were always open to other people. You were always inviting other people. So it was the love of both of you. So walking that path with you was also loving Russell as well. And it was just a natural thing for me. And there was times that we both didn't understand the grief because it just overcomes you. Sometimes it was where unexpectedly you will come to my door, and sometimes it was late at night, and no questions are being asked. You were just coming in, and I said, cup of tea, you will go, you will lie down. And what an honor, Beryl, it was for me that there was this kind of relationship. Everybody grieves differently. And I think it must be the most loneliest thing if you don't have a space where you can just be yourself, where you need to be outside of that space and go to another space. It was for me a privilege to be able to hold that space for you.
it was really such a comforting space. I could come to you, as you say, late at night with my hair in a state. Like I had a big shock when I looked at myself in the mirror and I saw my hair wasn't good. And I thought, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going just like this because I am down and out. And there you were. You joked afterwards, but you didn't joke during that time. And how your presence and your home was a place of comfort where I could calm down. And I think I started realizing that there is a much deeper connection between the two of us because sometimes I didn't even have to say a word and you would pick up on my thoughts. I will never forget one incident. I walked out of your bedroom. You were sitting in your lounge. I just finished reading a very disturbing email. And as I walked in, and you asked me a question, I'm not going to mention the question now. And you knew exactly. I was smiling. Nobody else would have thought that I was so traumatized, but you picked it up. And that is when I started realizing that this isn't just an ordinary friendship. This is a soul sister of mine. She understands, she can see right through me, she can read my thoughts. And I think that sense developed mutually. You didn't have to say that you are in pain. You didn't have to say what is grieving you. I could sense it. And I think that is how our soul sistership was, and our friendship. It can't even be called a friendship, really deepened so tremendously.
I still remember when I've been through 3 losses. It was first Adam, and I thought I'm going out of my mind. Then, with immediate effect, I divorced. That was 3 months after Adam passed on. That's also a loss, big loss. Then COVID came, and my mother-in-law passed on. And then 2 months after that, my beloved Titi passed on. So grief was high for me.
Yes, your mother, Titi.
Titi.
She was such a special person.
Special person that will think that Beryl is also a best friend. Who need to tell Beryl, listen, Beryl, that's not right, that is wrong. Like she will tell me. And I can still remember I was struggling in a dream. Can you still remember that dream, that afternoon?
Yes.
And that is also when I realized we have a deep connection because of our grieving processes, how our souls actually connected. And it was the bird. There was a bird.
I was sitting in the lounge.
Yes.
And you were sleeping. And this bird, I don't know birds. I can't say which bird it is. I think it's a partridge.
Yeah.
Yes, a patrijs. And that bird came. Now watched it approaching, walking from the back of the deck, coming right up to the door. And I'm sitting facing the door, and the bird came and knocked at that door. And I still said, Gershwin, who is living with you, look at this bird. This bird is telling me something. And then I went to check if you are okay, and you were soundly asleep. And then I came back, and the bird, when I said to the moment I told Gershwin, look at this bird, the bird left, flew up, and was sitting in the trees. I checked on you, and then later, when you woke up, you said you just woke up from this dream, and this dream had a bird in it.
Yes. Death actually reveals a lot. Russell had a public funeral, and so had Adam. Both of them had over 1,000 people at their funerals. And everybody had a say. And I also needed to grieve because it was my life. But with death also comes administration. It becomes like you've put yourself actually behind. And where I really looked at where you actually stepped in was when you took things out of my hands. Where you really could see I'm actually going off the rails now. I need structure. And some people didn't understand that. But I was really going off the rails. Silently, I was going off the rails because there were so many people making decisions for me, and I had no control over it. And I must still keep my sanity. And because you've been through this, you could immediately, in your special way, actually you've protected me by saying, no, this is not going to happen. This is going to happen. And for me, if I look back, it was the saving grace, because I wouldn't have been able to sit here.
Since I was fairly new in your circles, in your inner circle, and you had long-standing friends who looked at me quite strangely and wondered, where do you come from? Why are you playing such a central role here? I looked at the situation, and I had to identify who are the people who will help Marlene to go through this journey, because I know I needed help, and I had that support. And that's when I decided, Lucia, your best friend Lucia, who was at university at UWC with you, she was Adam's parent, and she was helping you in so many ways, amongst others, to arrange the funeral service. So I knew this is where the power lies. And so I moved in behind her power, and I became like a wing person. And and in that I knew that I was supporting you. And I would tell you that through her, or sometimes just when we were having our conversations, This is what I think. This is something that you should consider. And I knew that you might not be able to see it because I know where I was. You're not always able to see things for what they are, because it's such an intense, emotionally, spiritually, physically intense period. So, and then after that period of, after the funeral, I can quite comfortably say that Lucia and I are friends. We visit each other's homes. So I've made so many new connections during that time, new people that became my friends through you. And I value that. And I value that you listen to me, but us being quite similar, there are times that we do not listen to one another. And there are times that we misunderstand one another. But we could always work through that, and we could always talk to one another and get to the other side of whatever obstacle there would be.
I think, Beryl, both of us will never be the same after this big loss in our lives. Because there's always a hole in our heart. And I'm actually very emotional if I think, because for me, it's still every day, it's 8 years, for you, it's 10 years. I try to be getting up, looking life in the eye, and say it's okay. But what makes it, for me, worthwhile is that I have the Beryls, the Lucians, that our soul sisterness is not just about happy times. It's about deep connectedness. Because until you have not experienced the deep dark side of life together, you will only know one side of a person. We actually experience the deep truth of grief and death, because death is ugly.
Yeah, and we experienced all that darkness, and both of us knew that we had to really make light in our lives. We knew it's not just going to happen, and you did it for me. I did it for you. And Marlene, when people nowadays tell me, when I first went to Artscape, I don't think I've ever spoken to anybody about this. If we want to know where's Marlene, we don't have to wonder. We will hear her laugh. Now, after Adam, people still say to me, we will hear her laugh. But I can tell you, I don't hear you laugh loud at Artscape any longer. I can't just find you at Artscape. And when people remark about there she is, I can't identify with it because that part of you has died with Adam.
And you, right.
So that laughter is different. We do have many occasions when we laugh. We went to the West Coast and we had a silent couple of days, and we laughed. And you know how we can talk till in the middle of the night and laugh till our stomachs ache and we cry with laughter. And that is for us that connectedness. And I think we can find joy. We do find joy. We give each other joy when we can see that is what we need. And we can be there in the time when it is dark and it is lonely. I think I'm so happy that you have found love again and that I was one of your witnesses. It's a big, big privilege for me. But it doesn't take away that Marlene doesn't laugh the way she used to laugh, even with the beautiful love that you have found, and I'm so happy about. And I think we can conclude this. I would like us to conclude our soul sisterhood with one another by illustrating what happened the day that you interviewed me with the launch of my second book, Still Love Remains, at Stellenbosch University, Woordfees. You interviewed me, and there I sat on the podium with you.
Beryl, that was a day that I will never forget. I was busy interviewing you. We were fully prepared, as both of us are very OCD when it comes to when we must do something. And my Notes was there. I was supposed to read the poem to you, which was a surprise for you at the end. And as I was interviewing you, you were there. You were present at every question I'm asking you. You were prepared. We had quite an audience. And suddenly, the audience didn't notice it because I was sitting next to you and I'm attuned to you because we are soul sisters. You were leaving me. You left me on that stage, not physically, mentally. You were outside of your body. I saw you looking. You were standing outside of yourself. It was just your body sitting there, but you were not with me. Your eyes were not with me. You were looking at me, but you were not with me. And I realized you are having an out-of-body experience on stage, in an interview with me, with audience members coming to hear you speaking about your latest book. And I needed to think on my feet. How am I going to get you back? Because you were not capable of actually answering me or capable of speaking. It was 3 seconds, 4 seconds on a stage is a lot of time. Suddenly, I must read this poem because I must distract you now to come back to your body. But something profound happened on that stage. Because when I saw you come back, you were tired. You were tired because then I realized I must wrap up. So I read the poem, I started to wrap up, and you slowly came back to yourself. And what an experience. And I think if we didn't had this interconnectedness of understanding each other, it could have gone totally wrong.
And I still can't explain what had happened. Where I've been, I know I wasn't there. I remember staring out across the heads of the audience, like drifting out by the door. I can't see I can't explain where I've been, but I knew I wasn't there, and I think I knew I was safe wherever I've been, and you brought me back, and we continued. And I think Eddie was there that day, yes. And I asked him. Catherine was there that day. None of them noticed what had happened. And with that, I just want to say thank you for being my soul sister, for that the two of us are that for one another and with one another. Thank you for joining me on my couch.
And Beryl, I think nothing will stand in our way. Soul sisters never give up on each other because we've been through too much.
Thank you, Marlene. Thank you so much for being here today, but for being here in my heart, in my soul. Thank you for joining On a Way with Beryl Botman in conversation with Dr. Marlene Le Roux. Walk tall, tell it all. You've been listening to On a Way with Beryl Botman. You can purchase my books online on Amazon, Take-A-Lot, and at bookstores like Exclusive Books, Bargain Books, independent bookstores, and Barnes & Noble internationally. To connect with me, please follow me on Facebook to learn more about my book launches and talks. You can write to me at beryl.botman60@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.